This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Well, good afternoon, folks, and welcome to a Tuesday edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson, Michael Remis with you. NHL back on the ice last night. Some interesting happenings around the Canadian Football League we'll get to. Super Bowl media night, or opening night as they call it at the Super Bowl last night, with the Eagles and Chiefs both in Phoenix getting ready for a kickoff on Sunday in Glendale. And lots to get to today on the program. The Winnipeg Ice are back still at the top of the Eastern Conference in the Western Hockey League, beginning a quick homestand tomorrow against the Calgary Hitmen. We're going to bring on Brian Munz for the latest on the ice at this point in the season. Looking forward to that. A little later on, Mike McIntyre. Look ahead to the final 30 games for the Winnipeg Jets and everything happening around the hockey club and the National Hockey League. And then a little later on, one of my favorites and a very popular guest on the program, Geoff Feinberg, will jump on. We're going to talk Super Bowl. We'll talk a little bit of the happenings outside of the Eagles and Chiefs around the National Football League. We'll talk some golf with the big kegger that is the Waste Management Open, with the strongest field in event history, looking like a major getting going on Thursday. We'll talk about that with Feinberg a little later on. First up, got to thank all the sponsors that make the show happen each and every day. Our friends at Princess Auto, Coolbet Canada, Little Brown Jug, Canadian Club, Culligan Water, Vita Health, Fresh Market, Wallace & Wallace, Consolidated Supply, F Apparel, Manitoba Battery, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports. We'll get to a why not question of the day for the gang over at Not Auto Corp at Waverly and McGillivray. Let's get Michael Remis in here and get this party started. Remo, what's good, man? How are you?
Hey, feeling good here. There were no Jets last night, but man, we were entertained with some quality hockey, so I'm doing good there.
Yeah, you know what? Good vibes all around. I'm obviously very excited for the weekend and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Excited for the Jets to get back on the ice and get back playing. But maybe most of all, nice that we survived this latest deep freeze right now, and it's so freaking beautiful outside right now, pushing 0 degrees in early February. We will take it right now. And it actually looks like, with the exception of it getting cold at night, I think on Thursday, a beautiful rest of the week, 3 above on Saturday. So not much to complain about right now, although a lot of waiting for local sports fans for the Jets to get back on the ice, and certainly a lot of waiting for Eagles and Chiefs fans to finally get to Sunday and see what happens as they battle for the Lombardi.
Yeah, big weekend with the Jets. Saturday night, 9 p.m. against Chicago. Going to be an event. And then, Sunday, Super Bowl. So we still got a lot to look forward to. And we're going to talk to Brian with the Ice, who are here in Winnipeg. Weather's warming up. I got my car washed on the weekend. It was just filthy. But now now that you hear that it's melting, I'm going to be in the positive. I'm like, well, my car's going to get dirty again. So the lesson here is never wash your car.
Yeah, lots of people go that way through the winter. Either that way or just preserve gas, only drive when you have to. Although I think at some point this week, when you get out on the town, it's not going to matter how recently you had your car washed. It's going to be pretty dirty. Let's get to the ice last night. It sure was nice to have NHL games back. Had that great Battle of Florida, which was an absolute dud. Paul Maurice's Panthers, led by Matthew Tkachuk, the All-Star Game MVP, steamrolling the Lightning in their return to action. But I don't think there was any doubt, Reem, what the main event was last night in the league. That was that tilt between the Calgary Flames and the New York Rangers. And I know we don't see a lot of fights often, and certainly even big hits. that game had a little bit of everything, and it all seemed to center around former Winnipeg Jet and current New York Rangers Jacob Trouba, who was absolutely nuking guys with some of the hardest, cleanest hits I've seen in a long, long time. It was interesting to hear Gerard Gallant talk about it afterwards, how you don't often see that in an NHL game, but it was even more bizarre that it was coming out of the All-Star game. I mean, I was kind of expecting things to take a little while to ramp up. That was not the case last night at MSG between the Flames and the Rangers.
Yeah, the viral moment of the game, Nazem Kadri going down the wing, cuts to the middle, and runs into the freight train, number 8, Jacob Trouba. And look, I'll say Trouba, in the past, he has had some questionable hits, maybe getting the elbow up or hitting a guy in the head. This was not that. This was about as clean as it gets. This is why you have your head up before you cut to the middle. And he was there and met them head on, and Dylan Dubé came in and dropped the gloves. So Jacob Trouba, I mean, he's probably the most feared hitter in the NHL right now. Like, no one else. The reason why Kadri's no fear cutting the middle, because there's not many guys in the league that are going to blow you up like that, and Trouba timed it pretty well. And it was just a crazy game. You had, overtime, a ton of goals. It was, 4-4. You had a controversial allowed goal. Still trying to figure out what a kick is, Hustler. There was Mangiapane. Did he redirect that one? Did he maybe kick it a little? So you had that too. And yeah, first game back, we were looking for some action. You definitely got that overtime game. Vancouver, New Jersey went to overtime as well. New Jersey winning, and Anthony Beauvillier's debut in a Canucks jersey. Bo Horvat took the ice for the first time they won. And as you mentioned, Florida 7-1 over Tampa. I wonder if Florida makes a surge here now too in the second half. Watch out for them.
Well, they better. We'll get to that in a minute. But I mean, the thing about Trouba is that hit where he laid out Kadri was his second of the game. And it was kind of funny that it was Dylan Dubé that was going for revenge, because Dubé was the guy that found himself in the middle of the tracks when the Trouba train came through earlier on in the game. At that point, that was in the first period, and it was Chris Tanev that dropped the gloves to start a fight with Jacob Trouba, and, held his own. It wasn't a great fight. They kind of, at a certain point, grabbed each other's arms, and no one could really throw one. But it was pretty clear that Trouba would not be deterred from laying the body, because he did it again in the second period to Nazem Kadri. And then later on in the game, Reem, there was a lot of people wondering where the hell was Milan Lucic in all of this. Lucic took a hard hit from Sammy Blais. There was a scrap afterwards, actually 2 scraps. Zadorov trying to kill Blais, and Mackenzie Weegar giving it to who was it? Oh, Will Cully. Not familiar with him. Pretty big dude, but certainly took it on the chin. And then Trouba gave it to Lucic in the third period again. I'll say this about Trouba, and I know he's a controversial figure here in Winnipeg with some fans, because obviously he did not want to stay here, wasn't going to sign an extension, and ended up forcing a trade out of town. But I'm not sure that there's any doubt right now that as far as open ice hitters, he is about as dangerous a player as there is in the game right now. And I've got to give him a lot of credit. I mean, earlier on in his career, there were some very borderline, or some hits that weren't even borderline, that were straight up dangerous, that were headshots. He has perfected the technique of the hard body check right now. And I mean, there's always one or two people out there that are claiming it's predatory. But if you break down both of those checks, including the one where he gave it to Lucic later on, he's about as good of a hitter as there is in the National Hockey League. And I mean, the entertainment value of that game was cranked up tenfold because of the physicality that he brought to the game. Certainly the reaction to the Calgary Flames as well. But he's doing it within the rules. And even Sutter last night after the game said he had absolutely no problem with any of the hits that Jacob Trouba laid out. They were clean, hard body checks. And that's something that unfortunately we don't see as much of anymore in the game.
Yeah, a lot of people in chat right now debating, should you have to fight after a clean body check? And I mean, my answer to that is no. You should. It should be no, but I mean, you have guys, you said like Dubé and other guys come in, and start a big brouhaha, but good for Trouba. I remember when he was here, he would try to line guys up, and he would miss pretty frequently. He did have a big miss earlier this year, but when you connect, makes a huge impact and makes guys think twice. And you mentioned Jacob Trouba. I thought you were going to say he's a controversial figure here, not because he left, but because he held the puck against the wall in Game 5 and tried to run the timeout with 15 seconds left.
We really had to go back there,
I thought it was that, but no, it was because he wouldn't sign here long term. You were right. Sorry, I was wrong. I was wrong at that one. And it's kind of funny. You mentioned how the game was, everyone was talking about it on social media. It was the game of the year for reasons, physicality, goal scoring. And we haven't mentioned Alexis Lafreniere scoring the winner in overtime. But everyone was talking about this game, number of reasons. But I saw Dustin Nielsen tweet out that it was one of the best games in the season, but they posted condensed highlights on NHL.com where we all go to watch the condensed highlights after. And they did not include any video of any hits or fights. And that's kind of weird that, part of the reason why people are attracted to the game is physical play, fighting, but I don't know who's responsible for cutting highlights of these games at NHL.com, but it seems curious when you're not showing plays that are within the rules of the game.
Well, and that's all that anyone's talking about. And I don't think listen, if you don't want to have that as part of the game, ban it, outlaw it. I mean, the NHL could do that. They don't want to do that. It is integral to the sport as we know it, even with the improvements in player safety and some of the rule changes that were absolutely necessary. And I think most hockey fans agree, have helped the game make it safer for players, which, it has to be that way to continue going forward. But you're exactly right. And on top of that, Reem, if you looked at the Sportsnet or the NHL write-ups of the game, those dust-ups and the hits weren't even mentioned. And I have to say that is very, very puzzling. I'm not sure whether that is a league directive or whether that's from, I know a lot of people will say, this is all Gary Bettman. I have a feeling Bettman's not getting into the nuances or minutia of write-ups of the game or the highlights. But it's pretty clear that somewhere within the National Hockey League head office, there's an aversion to including that stuff after the fact, which, to be honest, makes absolutely no sense considering how it lit the hockey world on fire last night and got everyone to a television to watch the rest of the game if they'd missed the start of it.
Yeah, my whole timeline was everyone talking about Jacob Trouba, a lot of discussion here and our show as well. So, good way for the NHL to get back into it after the All-Star break. Have one of the games there with the Rangers, winning 5-4 over the Calgary Flames, who are battling for that playoff spot after winning their division last year. And you have to wonder if they're going to get there as the Oilers surging, Colorado's playing real well, Seattle, LA, and Vegas ahead of them. It's going to be tough for Calgary here, and I think they kind of needed that one, although they did get a point. So you got the loser point.
One thing that actually surprised me, so I did this tweet last night that Trouba was just nuking dudes left and right. And, as I said, there's a couple people. One guy said that he should be suspended for 20 games because he's predatory. I'm not sure whether that was a Flames fan or someone that just still hates Trouba for the way that he left Winnipeg. But I did get, and I just sent this to you on DM, Reem. I don't know if you want to throw this up. One of the cards, the graphic cards that basically shows the analytics for the season for Jacob Trouba, because I did see a lot of people, talking about, and we have Neil Pionk to show for him. And obviously we know that Pionk at times has struggled so far this year. Take this for what it's worth. And again, I'm no analytics expert by any stretch of the imagination, but the goals above replacement, expected goals above replacement on offense and defense, power play shorthanded. When you pull up the Jacob Trouba card for this year, while everyone's going gaga about him making, that night as exciting as it was yesterday and backing up his big hits, throwing down with whoever come out, the numbers for what it's worth on these cards will not make people miss him as much as maybe the highlights would have last night. And I think the New York Rangers are still very happy with Trouba, very happy that he's the captain of the club. but it just kind of goes to show you how, depending on who you're talking to and what perspective they're giving you, it can be a very, very different story, because these numbers don't look good for the guy that is a franchise player and the guy wearing the C for the Blue Shirts.
Yeah, I mean, you can deliver a big hit, but can you break the puck out? Can you make a good passing? Are you collecting points for your team? So I don't know if Jacob Trouba is doing a lot of that, but he's definitely making the highlight reel with the big hits. And you're just looking at his points this year. He's got, 3 goals, 11 assists, 14 points in 50 games. He's got 51 penalty minutes. I mean, plus minus is -8. The Rangers as a whole not having as good of a season, not getting the goaltending they were getting last year, but he's the captain, and he's making some news last night.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And of course, if he was going to smoke anybody on the Calgary Flames, there's a lot of people that weren't too upset that it was Nazem Kadri. Elsewhere in the league last night, Arizona Coyotes did the Jets a little bit of a favor last night. Who had that one on the card? Did you have a Coyotes money line win on your wagers last night, beating the Minnesota Wild? Not a way Minnesota wanted to started their schedule coming out of the break and making up a couple of those games they have in hand on teams like the Winnipeg Jets and Dallas Stars.
Didn't you know us? First game back after the All-Star break, in a warm weather climate and time zone. Garrett, it's scheduled loss for Minnesota there, of course.
Why didn't I know that? Why didn't I
bet
that?
We should have known that.
Got it on the game.
And there it was, our guy Vejmelka stomping 33 of 35, 943 save percentage, doing the Jets some favors there, taking down Minnesota, the Coyotes. Impressive. I mean, they're going to win games. They got some good players. They don't have Dylan Guenther, who did get sent down yesterday. We didn't mention that, but there it was. And who had 2 goals? The guy who might be getting traded, who's on the top of everyone's trade board, Jacob Chychrun, played 22 minutes, 6 minutes on the power play. Hey, if he's looking to get dealt and teams want to give something up for him, a nice performance for him last night as the Coyotes won 3-2 over the Wild. And just looking at the standings now, Minnesota, they're still back of the Jets, 58 points and 49. Jets have 65 and 52. Dallas, who got the shootout win after losing a couple consecutive in overtime, were able to get the 2 points in extra time. And there's Colorado there. They're still lurking. They're 1 point back of Minnesota with a game in hand and a couple games in hand, 4 games in hand on the Jets. So watch out for Colorado.
Yeah, Vejmelka. And I'm not sure whether more and more other fan bases in the league are kind of joining us in the awe that his play has inspired against our team. But we've talked about teams getting Vejmelka. The Jets have had it happen, particularly last year, happened to the Leafs before. And there he was last night, as you mentioned, making 33 saves on 35 shots. And his numbers are still relatively pedestrian. I mean, he's got a .908 save percentage and a 3.16 goals against average. But when you compare him to other goalies around the league with what is in front of him, listen, he is an exciting young player that I think in a better situation could be a real difference maker. And it got me thinking last night, Reem, coming out, like, what would the value be for Vejmelka on the trade market? I mean, his name has been thrown out there. He signed for 2 more years at a relatively inexpensive number. I know there's been so much talk about Jacob Chychrun and what the Coyotes want for his services if they are traded. I got to tell you, they got another piece in Vejmelka that, listen, if they want to lose games, getting him off the roster probably would help their run for Connor Bedard. But you look at a team like the Los Angeles Kings, who incredibly, and this doesn't even seem possible, to be honest, the Kings right now have been so poor at keeping the puck out of their own net. They've got a -10 goal differential this year, which is actually worse than the Ottawa Senators right now, and yet there the Kings are at 10 games above 500. You wonder what the cost would be, but also what the value would be of a player like Vejmelka making the move to LA. Because as much as he's doing a great job for the Coyotes, it's not going to mean a damn thing other than maybe harming the Coyotes' opportunity to get a better chance of having Connor Bedard at the end of this season.
Yeah, a couple goalies to watch at the deadline. There's some teams that need goalies. LA, Buffalo, and we're going to talk about the Sabres in a sec, making some news. Pittsburgh do something with their goaltending, and the name, the goaltending name that I keep seeing, people talk about is Thatcher Demko. Is Vancouver going to move on from him? But it seems like if you want to rebuild, it's good to have a good goalie because it masks a lot of your problems. And I do wonder if the Coyotes will trade Vejmelka. I mean, he's been really good against the Jets and the Leafs, so that definitely probably helps when people talk about him. There are some people in chat that think the Jets should acquire him. I don't think that makes sense.
There's one.
Yeah.
What?
There's one guy in chat every day who writes the Jets should get him. Like he's not going to play.
I just assumed that was a troll. Like someone was joking.
I don't think
because
so.
I have seen that beforehand.
We don't need to spend a lot of time on it, but it doesn't make sense for them. They have.
So
we're
just gonna get it. We need to improve the backup goalie position for the Winnipeg Jets right now.
I don't know. I'm just saying what I see every day. I showed it to SK, who is here frequently. I love reading his takes, but we can disagree.
Point in chat whether you're actually being serious or just having fun with us, SK, and then we can.
He's dead serious. He's dead serious. He writes every day. Did they get Vejmelka? Yeah, like I don't know why we don't, and we've already spent too much time on it. I want to talk about this Cousins contract.
Hey, just quickly before we move off Vejmelka, the Kings are an obvious suitor right now that would make a lot of sense. But you did mention that other team that I think certainly would have the capital, younger players to maybe make that deal, and that's the Buffalo Sabres. And we're going to get to a big move that Buffalo made earlier today in a moment. But Buffalo right now, 56 points. They are 1 point back of a playoff spot, and they've got some games in hand on a bunch of teams. Like the Buffalo Sabres are absolutely right in it right now. And the one thing that maybe might keep them from getting over that hump is, the fact that they don't really have any established number one goalie. Eric Comrie had a great start. That cooled off quickly, and then he was injured for a good period of time. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen has been pretty good at times, and Craig Anderson has actually played quite well, but how much can you put on the shoulders of a guy on the other side of 40 years old? A Buffalo acquisition of Vejmelka, I could get behind that, and I think that might be something. I guarantee you, if Vejmelka got there to Buffalo, depending on what they'd have to give up from their current roster right now, that would make the Sabres in the mix, even if they don't make the playoffs, right there to the final games of the regular season, if you ask me.
Yeah, they've kind of been rotating, as you said, between Anderson, who's been in the league for a long time, and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. We saw Comrie here, who did get the win. So I'm curious. I saw it was Elliott mentioning the Sabres every time a goalie's name comes up, and that's something to watch. But the Sabres did make the big news of the day. This was one where I was looking at my phone, and I was like, "Whoa, what a deal for Dylan Cousins here!" Was it 7 years, AAV of 7.1, 21 years old. He's a former number one pick, first round pick, 7th overall in 2019. He's in the middle of his third season right now, 49 games, 43 points, and the Sabres locking him up. And this is big for them. So they got their two top centers, Tage Thompson. He's on this amazing contract now, having this fantastic season. You got him and Dylan Cousins locked up, both just over $7 million each. So who was it? The young guy, Matt Boldy, got the contract. He got 7x7 before, couple of weeks ago, and now Dylan Cousins. And you're seeing this more and more. They're just locking up these young guys. When you have the control and saying, okay, we're going to give you 7. Did buy with 3 UFA seasons as well. So, people are kind of raising their eyebrows with this one, Huss, but this is a great deal for this. This is going to be a great deal moving forward for the Sabres.
Oh, listen, I'm a huge fan of Cousins. When we were talking about some big potential moves by the Jets last offseason, he was a player that if, they were going to be giving up a top player, if they were looking for a veteran, this is kind of surrounding our Mark Scheifele talk. I'd always say, I didn't think that the Buffalo would be interested in moving him, but he was the guy that I was really, really keen on. And man, he's just exploded this season. And to be honest, this contract, Reem, reminds me quite a bit of the Mark Scheifele deal with the Winnipeg Jets. Now, Scheifele was a couple years older, but it was still the end of his ELC because it rolled over for 2 years when he didn't play the maximum amount of games. And when you think of Scheif and what he had done in that season, he had just come off 29 goals, 61 points in 71 games. The year before, he had 49 points in 82. And the year before, his first full season and as NHLer, 34 points in 63 games. I think you can make the comparisons to Dylan Cousins. Both were picked, actually, the same spot, 7th overall. He was 13 points in 41 games as a rookie, went to 13 goals, 38 points last year as a sophomore, and now this year, playing out his ELC, is just under a point a game right now. It's 17 goals, 26 assists, 43 points for 49 in 49 games. And I think that the Buffalo Sabres are completely set up. I was very skeptical about Kevin Adams in his role as a National Hockey League GM when you consider the circumstances that brought him into that role. It sort of seemed like Buffalo was going on the cheap. He was in the business operations. He had no experience whatsoever in management of the NHL. But as we sit here right now, I think they've made some great picks. He certainly looks pretty good with a couple of the trades that he's made, including the massive one with Jack Eichel. And now he's got Tage Thompson and Dylan Cousins signed both long-term at just over $7 million a pop each. And much like the Scheifele deal and people talking about Kyle Connor's deal, I mean, many of these longer-term deals where you're paying players earlier than they might normally get paid, but getting the term involved with it, I think he's hit a home run with both of these deals. So Kevin with a Y gets an A for player retention right now in a place that traditionally it's been pretty hard to do it.
Yeah, and you look at their draft next year, they got to still have their first round pick. They have 3 second rounders, and you do wonder if there's some room to make a move. And I agree. I mean, you find these young guys at 21, and you have them as, the years you have them for team control is their prime years. And we're seeing, guys get to free agency, they're already, 28, 29. You don't want to be paying for past performance. So we're seeing more and more teams make bets on these guys, pay for future performance, while also getting, the player gets the contract. I mean, he gets guaranteed $50 million. But the team, if the salary cap goes up, which we're expecting it to, and Cousins improves, I mean, he could definitely outperform this contract. So good, it's a good move for the team and the player. And Buffalo, I mean, they're set up to be pretty good for a while. I mean, Rasmus Dahlin is the guy I think we got our eye on next. He's an RFA after next season. And with the season he's having now, I have to wonder what his number is going to be, and wonder if it's going to be tough for the Sabres to keep all the. I don't think we're there yet, but
well, we're far away from it. And first of all, when you look at Buffalo right now, I mean, they are second last. The only team that's spending less money than the Sabres on players right now is the Arizona Coyotes.
Oh, so they're in good shape.
I mean, they're just basically above the floor. Now, that being said, Tage Thompson this year's making $1.4 million. He'll go to $7.142 next year. Cousins is making less than $1 million on his ELC this year. He'll go to 7.1. So you will see a big jump up on those deals. I mean, they still have Jeff Skinner making $9 million a year, but they're going to have $6 million off the books at the end of the season when the Kyle Okposo deal expires. So I will say this, I think they're in a really good spot. And the other thing that they got, and this was a huge piece of that Jack Eichel trade, was that Alex Tuch deal. And we can talk a lot about players that, signed a long-term deal and took less for long-term security. I'm not sure there's a better example of that in the league than Alex Tuch. It sounded like at the time he was very interested in being a Vegas Golden Knight long-term, and he's making less than $5 million for 3 more seasons after this one, and obviously is a big part of one of the top lines in hockey, playing along with Jeff Skinner and Tage Thompson on that Buffalo top line. So a very interesting signing today that I think in a lot of ways will be used as comparable for a number of other younger players looking to maybe break the bank and get bigger money coming out of their ELC as opposed to that bridge deal. The bridge deal that you mentioned, Rasmus Dahlin has right now, he's got 1 more year at $6 million, and then, of course, will be an RFA, but will have arbitration. But I'll tell you what, I think with the players that they've acquired, the trending, the momentum that they have, that's not a play. Far more likely to be able to keep a player like that now than they would have had in the past, considering how miserable the last decade's been in Buffalo.
Yeah, and again, you're not seeing too many bridge deals because after the bridge deal, you just got to pay them more anyways, and that's kind of what happened with Montreal and when they hardballed DK Subban. I remember that one. So, yeah, we had the two big contracts, Boldy, Cousins. I don't know if we're gonna have any, what else we're gonna have down the pipe, but interesting. And I saw some people who was talking about Philip Hedl, who's been on a tear here for the Rangers, and you wonder if that's a guy who's coming out of his ELC, uses those as a comparable.
Well, and the Rangers are always spending money, always trying to acquire players. I mean, they will be. And Partisan Paul in chat asks, Huss, how will the Horvat deal affect Pierre-Luc Dubois' next contract? A good question. I mean, he did have a 31-goal season last year. He's already got 31 this year and could potentially get to 40. But Dubois is right in that range as well. And I think, based on age, based on performance, they probably will be somewhat of a comparable. But I mean, Remis, I don't know about you. I kind of think that he'll be getting more than Bo Horvat got on the 8-year extension with the New York Islanders, in that, he, first of all, I mean, if he signs here in Winnipeg, I think they maybe will have to pay a little bit more to make sure that they keep him. And if not, and he eventually gets to unrestricted free agency with everyone in the league having an opportunity at him, even if apparently everyone thinks that he just wants to go to one place, I think there'll be plenty of money on the table. Because the one thing that Dubois has that maybe Horvat doesn't have quite as much is that real physical 200-foot game. Although I think Bo Horvat does have that, but Dubois, with the size, the strength that he brings, I really think that he'd probably be even more attractive to NHL GMs, especially considering that he'll be, 25 years old when that contract expires.
Yeah, Dubois is turning 25 in June, so he's a couple years younger than Horvat. So I would think Dubois is going to get a bigger contract than Horvat.
Call that the floor on his contract. And again, the big thing is like the length of the deal, right? I mean, the other thing, how long is he going to be signing for? If it is an 8-year extension with a team that has his rights, whether it's Winnipeg or someone that he's traded to, that's probably going to be where the conversation starts. And I'd be shocked if it didn't end up starting with a 9, potentially even 8 figures, depending on how aggressive and how many teams are in the mix. All right, there's a bunch of the NHL talk coming out of last night, and of course the big news from earlier today. We're going to get to some WHL talk before we get back to the NHL with Mike McIntyre. Look ahead to the Jets on the weekend, coming back to practice, as well as the final 30 games of the season. But before we get to the Winnipeg Ice, we're going to get down to about below -20 in a couple days in the evening. Folks, if you're nervous about that battery, whether it can survive the Winnipeg winter, you should be heading down and seeing Donnie and the gang at Manitoba Battery at 1026 Logan Avenue. They'll give you a quick, free battery test to let you know how the life of your battery is projecting. And hey, if you need one, you'll be able to shop local and get the best price in town, all in that quick stop to Manitoba Battery. If you're in the camp where you know you need a new battery, you can save time, save money, save the gas getting around, and Manitoba Battery will deliver you a battery same day if you give them a call or order online at manitobabattery.com by 3 p.m. They are the battery leaders in town with the best prices and the best service. Don't waste your time at any of the big box stores, and don't waste your time going anywhere. Manitoba Battery will bring it to you, 1026 Logan Avenue, and online at manitobabattery.com. Well, with it being nice outside, it's quite natural to start thinking about what it's going to be like when the snow melts. Thinking about some projects in the backyard, taking care of that lawn, boosting the irrigation on your property, or maybe putting in some artificial turf in areas where you don't want to cut anymore, or maybe that dream putting green. Consolidated Supply has you covered. Joe Spicy and the gang down at 1395 Niagara Road East, open to the public. Have all the best when it comes to irrigation, and artificial turf. Just ask anyone in the golf industry. And while you're thinking about adding to your property or your backyard, consider a spa, hot tub, or an amazing outdoor kitchen. They have it all, not to mention your leaders in small engine parts and engine repair. Consolidated Supply, open to the public over at 1395 Niagara Road East, and find out everything they've got going on online at cte.ca. Don't forget, entries are open for nominations for the Unsung Hero program. We're very proudly involved with Wallace & Wallace and Jets All-Star defenseman Josh Morrissey. Send us an email to unsunghero@winnipegsportstalk.com. Let us know about that person in the community that's spending extra hours out of their already busy schedule helping others, whether it be through charity work, volunteerism in so many different ways, or just being that person that when there's a big snowfall, helping some of the elderly or others on the block that need an extra hand and is always there for them. Unsung Hero at winnipegsportstalk.com. Send us an email. Autographed Josh Morrissey jersey goes to the Unsung Hero every month, and a $1,000 donation from Wallace & Wallace and Josh and Margot Morrissey to the Dream Factory in the name of the Winnipeg Sports Talk listener that nominated our Unsung Hero. And just before we get to Munzie, don't forget Vita Health Fresh Market has 7 market stores and a great fully shoppable website at myvita.ca featuring great prices on natural and organic supplements, beauty products, and groceries. And of course, it is Heart Month in February, and it's crucial to support this vital organ with omega-3 fatty acids. We can't always get enough in our diets, so to supplement with RX omega-3 fish oil by Natural Factors, it helps support cardiovascular growth, cognitive function, that's your brain, people, eye health, and helps with joint pain and flexibility. It's on sale today at Vita Health Fresh Market. Vita Health, empowering people to lead healthy lives. 7 Winnipeg locations, including the newest store in Linden Ridge, and online at myvita.ca. All right, we're going to talk Jets in a few minutes with Mike McIntyre, but right now let's welcome in Brian Munz and take a look at the Winnipeg Ice's homestand beginning tomorrow. Munzie, how are you? Welcome back to the Peg. You guys have been all over the place lately.
Yeah, we've had a few hours on the old Iron Lung as of late, and we'll have a few more coming up after the 4-game homestand. But it is nice to be back home. Obviously, the team is excited to get a chance to play some big games coming up this week against Calgary. And I haven't seen Edmonton since last year's Eastern Conference Championship Series, and Saturday's game against the Oil Kings will be the first time since then. So it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot going on at the Ice King. We'll kind of run that down in a minute. Just before we get to this week, let's talk about these last few games. Well, first of all, an absolute thriller. I mean, anyone that was at the Keystone Center in Brandon sure got a fun one. 7-6 in overtime in the Battle of Manitoba. It honestly doesn't seem to matter what's happening with these teams in previous games, who's on a winning streak, who's on a losing streak. When the Wheaties and Ice go at it, it's always a fun game, and that one would have been right at the top of this season's series, though, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was a crazy night. It's funny because you look at going in, and you've got 2 really good goaltenders, right? You've got Carson Bjarnason, and you've got Mason Beaupitt, who had been on a 4-game undefeated streak, I think, going into that one to start off the weekend. And Bjarnason's going to be a draft pick this year and played in the top prospects game. So you're thinking, okay, maybe it's going to be a 2-1 hockey game, or maybe 3-2 or 4-2 with an empty net. And, Brandon Crowe was doing the game with me. And I said to James Patrick after the game, and I've used this line a few times, a game like that's a broadcaster's dream, but it's a coach's nightmare, right? Like they're wondering what's going on. And by the time I think we got into the second intermission, I said to Crozy on the air and to Kevin O, I'm like, Convert might win this. And lo and behold, both teams got the touchdown. Winnipeg was able to get the convert. So it was a crazy night, but it was fun, right? Because you look at all the scoring that's there. Both teams have a ton of talent offensively, and it was a fun night. There was over 4,400 fans at West Toba Place, and they do a fantastic job with the in-house there. The building was rocking, and the teams didn't disappoint on the ice for sure. Well,
and staying on that trip, I mean, you did have a couple games against Saskatoon, a win at home, and then a tough 3-2 loss in the game on Saturday night. And we spend so much time focusing on the ice, and you just look at the top of the standings, and there they are. That Saskatoon Blades team has some players on it as well, and man, there's been some tight games between the two.
Yeah, there has. The 6-game regular season series is over, and it's kind of one of those quirks in the calendar. We talked off the start about not seeing Edmonton yet, and Winnipeg has played all 6 games they'll play against the Blades this year. So, they're done with that team. So that's kind of one of those things that you look at and you kind of wonder how it happens, but that's just kind of the quirks of a calendar. But Saskatoon is really good. They've got 2 netminders that they've kind of gone back and forth with all season long, and in Elliott and Chadwick. We saw Chadwick the last couple of games. He was tremendous. They have been going through some injuries as of late, but they have got a few of their top-end players back. Aiden Delagorjandier, their captain's a 20-year-old on the blue line, and you can notice when he was back in the lineup, they've got some really good, slick players up front. Igor Sidorov is a young Belarusian player. They brought Jake Chason in from the Brandon Wheat Kings. So, it's 2 teams. I think Winnipeg's a deeper team, but the Blades play hard. They play a good team game, and Brendan Sawney's done a really good job at that club. So they make you work each and every night. And Winnipeg was able to go 4-2 against the Blades this season. So I think that gives them some confidence. And it was a long trip too, right? Like they play in Brandon on Friday. Then you've got a 7-hour bus ride going into Saskatoon. So players didn't get to bed till about 4:30. So they gutted that one out. They lost, but they don't have a lot of losses this year. So I don't think you can really complain too much about dropping the odd one here and there.
Oh no! Listen, we're pulling all the alarms right now. The Ice lost a game. The sky is falling right now. Hey, I've got to ask you: when you have a schedule like that, and the team plays on Friday night, you get in the bus, you drive all night, you get in at 4:30 in the morning or whatever to where you're staying. What is the next day like for the players? I mean, traditionally, there's maybe a morning skate. There's some activities. The guys just shut it down until the afternoon, and you just get to the rink and play. I mean, give us a bit of an idea about a day in the life of an ice player on one of those crazy road trips.
Yeah, so you know what, I guess Cole's notes for the weekend, if you've got back-to-back like that. So Friday, coming into the Brandon game, they would have came to our practice facility, had the morning skate. It's a regular game day. 1 o'clock, quick trip over to Boston Pizza, have a pregame meal, and we jump on the bus, go into Brandon. You get into town about 4:30, and then the game's at 7. So they like to get there about 2.5 hours before the game. After the game in Brandon, we had a bite to eat at the arena, and then jumped on the bus. As you allude to, we got in around 4:30 in the morning. So players went and shut her down real quick, obviously, and slept till around 10-ish. And then had a team breakfast around 11. Went out for a little team walk to get some fresh air after that and kind of get your legs moving a little bit. And then players could kind of do whatever they want. Some guys, I'm sure, probably went back in the wrapper and had a nap for a little bit. Pre-game meal is at 1. And then I would think for the most part, guys probably shut it down again from 1:30 until 3:30 or whatever they felt they needed to do. And then left for the rink again at 4:15, and you're playing the 7 o'clock game. So it was as much about time management and rest and recover. And obviously, they would have done a little bit of medical. Any player needed to do that either in the hotel or when they got to the arena. So there's a lot going on, and guys got their rest kind of when they could. And I can tell you the bus was pretty quiet on the way home from Saskatoon, including yours truly. I think we were all asleep by the time we hit Davidson. And woke up about 7 hours later when we got to Headingley.
Well, you know what? Even with the result of that game, well deserved. This team's, listen, just by geography, puts on more miles than probably anybody else in the Western Hockey League. So you got to make the most of that time on the bus. Munzie, before I get to this upcoming homestand, I want to ask you about a couple players. And last week, of course, all the hype was about Connor Bedard, who is, of course, a phenom. He was playing on national television. But at the same time that was happening, Zach Benson was kind of reminding people that there's a pretty elite draft prospect playing here in Winnipeg with that ridiculous goal that went somewhat viral on the net. On the net, 72 points in 44 games for the young man. How's he doing? Where's he at right now? And how big a part of this season for him is kind of reminding people? Listen, I'm sure there's scouts at every game, and it's not like he's in a competition with Bedard or anything like that. But This is one of the most exciting prospects we've had coming out of Manitoba in a very, very long time, and he seems to be getting better throughout the year. Fill us in on where Zach's at and how big a part of the Ice success he's been.
Yeah, he's been a huge part, right? Like he's a big piece, obviously, and you look in the footsteps that he's following right now for first rounders with Peyton Krebs and Carson Lambos, and then last year, obviously, Savoy and Geeky. And he's number 2 in the league right now with 72 points. He's got 27 goals and 45 assists, but he is getting better and better as the year goes on. And I think that's kind of the scary thing for me right now is he's playing on a line with Matt Savoy and Connor McLennan. McLennan scored 6 goals in the last 3 games in his final year of eligibility. And obviously we know what Matt's been able to do consistently for the last few years to get drafted 9th overall by Buffalo. So it's a trio right now that's working extremely hard. I think that's the first thing that I would say about Zach Benson is he wants to get better every time that he's on the ice. He never takes a practice off. He's always working on something, whether it's a stick or his shot or his skating or, his defensive play that James Patrick's always talking about right now. He's a big piece of the penalty kill. Like, it's not just offense for Zach Benson. He takes pride in being a part of that either 3-man or 4-man shutdown unit. So it's been a really good year, and that's why we're seeing the results for him on the ice right now. And you mentioned the scouts. They're all over the place, and everywhere you go, everybody's always asking about Zach and wanting the background and what he is like as a kid. And he's fantastic. He's a treat to watch, and he's very special. There's no doubt about it.
Sometimes everything that goes that comes with being a top draft prospect in the draft year adds. I think it naturally adds another whole level of pressure on an individual. How much do you think it's helping Zach to be playing with so many other NHL first rounders and to be on a team as strong as the Winnipeg Ice have been since the puck dropped in game 1?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think it's huge because he doesn't have to be the guy. Armstrong's a big 6-foot-plus player that came in from Regina to add something into that top 9. Ty Nash, like all these players are giving James Patrick such a wealth right now of riches to work with that, if one team says, okay, we're going to shut down Benson, Savoy, and McLennan, the other 6 forwards or 10 forwards, if you want to include Friesen and Schillo, are kind of licking their chops saying, okay, we're going to get a great opportunity against the bottom 6 of the other team, right? So this team is built for now. There's no doubt about it. And they're a lot of fun to watch. But I think that's the best part of it right now is it's not just a one-line team. It's 3 number 1 lines that can come out and make an impression on you on any given night.
You mentioned Zach Ostapchuk. I did want to ask you about him. He was the big name that was acquired right before the deadline by the Winnipeg Ice. Yeah. Quite a bounty going the other way to get him in here. How's his first few weeks been with the Ice? How's he fit in? And what does he bring to the team? When I'm sure the thoughts were when you're adding a player like that was for a long playoff run come WHL playoffs.
Well, I guess kind of to answer your question with a question is who's the number 1 center, right? Is it Zach Ostapchuk? Is it Connor Geeky? Is it Matthew Savoy? Right? Like, once again, kind of what we were just alluding to right there. They've got that 1, 2, 3 that, you just kind of mix and mingle when I'm doing the line chart each and every day. You just kind of move them around because there isn't really a 1A, right? Like it's probably 1A, 1B, 1C. So the depth pays off right now, but you see he's 6'3", he's 200 pounds. He's getting more comfortable. He grew up with Savoy and Paterson, so the 3 of them are super tight coming in. So I think that helped a lot. He knew Connor McLennan as well, another Alberta boy right there. So, there wasn't the long phase of kind of get to know you. What's this team all about? He walked in and, he's buddies with everybody already. So it's been a really seamless transition for him, and I know he's had a ton of fun in it.
Brian Munz with the Winnipeg Ice getting us ready for a big homestand beginning tomorrow. Just before we kind of roll out this next week for the Ice and how people can get out to the Ice Cave and see them, Munzy, James Patrick, we had a great chat with him a few weeks ago. I imagine it's a unique challenge, a great one to have with the team as talented as the Ice is, as comfortably as they are in first place. They've got a 3-point lead on Red Deer right now, but they've got 4 games in hand. What are the challenges right now that James is going through with this club. They seem to be very motivated and bring it each and every night. But I imagine there's some unique challenges from a coaching perspective when you've got another 20 odd games left in the regular season and you're as comfortable as the Ice are in the standings as they currently sit.
Yeah, I was just pulling up a couple of numbers here because him and I talked about it. I think it was going into the Brandon game, actually. They went through the month of January going 7-1-1. So they only played 9 games in that first month of 2023. Now they're in the midst of playing 14 games in 28 days. So that, to me, is the biggest challenge right now of not looking at the whole month as a whole, but just taking it day by day, but then also realizing that you've got games coming up tomorrow and Thursday against Calgary. You've got Edmonton Saturday. Then you've got a couple days before Swift Current comes in next Wednesday to wrap up the 4-game homestand. And then they're going to head on the road for another 10-game road trip. So as much as the start of the year was a bit of a gauntlet with, 13, I think, when we played before coming back home. Then they had the long homestand. They've got another grinder that they've got to manage through Saskatchewan and Alberta again. And that's just the quirks of the Western Hockey League. Every team goes through it. But I guess not getting yourself caught up in the big picture and looking at it in a smaller, maybe weekly segment or something like that is probably the biggest thing for the coaching staff right now. Because if you look at the month of February and see you've got 28 squares and 14 of them have a game on it, that's a little bit daunting, but kind of it is what it is, right?
Well, and I imagine the fact that there were so many deals a couple of weeks ago in and around the deadline with some new players coming in, added some fresh blood. You've got working on adapting all those new players in. So maybe freshen things up a little bit. Bottom line is, though, this team continues to win and play at a level that will scare a lot of opponents come playoff time. And, man, just quickly, Munzie, this league right now, the Ice clearly the team to beat in the East. But you got Seattle Thunderbirds that are at the top of the West. Brad Lambert joining them, and then Dylan Guenther coming in from the Coyotes, as well as Kamloops in Portland. Unfortunate for Portland, and of course Jets prospect Chaz Lucius, that it looks like he's going to be out for the rest of the season. But it was a bit of an arms race at the trade deadline, and it's going to be fascinating to see how things shake out. Bottom line is, once we get to the finish line of this Western Hockey League season, we're going to be seeing a ton of future NHLers and a very, very high level of hockey in these series, really beginning right from the first round.
Yeah, and don't forget, Kamloops is obviously hosting, right, the Memorial Cup, so they load it up as much as they can because they know they're in, and now you've got to see who gets to join them coming up in, I guess, just over a month and a half. It's hard to believe when you look at the calendar as to the way it is, but we're into the back portion of it here for sure.
Well, Munzie, let's get to it this week. Jets off, perfect opportunity to get out and see the Ice if you haven't out at the Ice Cave Wednesday and Thursday against the Calgary Hitmen. And you guys have one thing I'll give you a lot of credit, and especially the players. I saw a young clinic they did on the ice. What was it, last night or the night before at home? Wednesday, the game in support of the Ronald McDonald House. They're collecting non-perishable goods for their pantries. Of course, Connor Geeky, the ambassador locally for the Ronald McDonald House. And then the Movement Center, who with Matt Savoy being involved with that, a bunch of the kids coming out. It's a very special night for the Movement Center. Just another example of kind of the community outreach the young men wearing Ice jerseys in the organization's done so far this year.
Yeah, you know what? I think as an organization, really proud of obviously what the players have done on the ice. That's what, the majority of the people see. But I looked at it, I would say it's probably about 3 weeks ago now. And I think towards the end of the year, they're going to be over 500 hours of community service. So it means a lot. And they have so much fun with it too, right? Like there's 16 to 20-year-old young men that get a chance to go out and they remember when they were, now it's not that long ago, but it's 6, 7, 8 years ago when they were growing up in their small town and they were seeing the players that they are right now and have the local heroes. So yeah, 2 big games obviously against Calgary coming up. We just saw the Hitman Owen Peterson scored the game winner in overtime and we were there last week. So they've got a good club that's kind of in that mix right now for battling for a playoff spot. But Connor's done a lot of work with RMHC. They've got the brand new house downtown, and we obviously want to do as much as we can for them. And then Matt Savoy has spent some time out at the movement center, and it's amazing the work that they do with some younger children and then some older people as well in trying to make their lives as great as they can. And also on Thursday, pregame, we're honoring Mike Sarant for all his dedication to the U of M Bisons. Over 30 years, his story is well known as a player and a coach, and he's announced his retirement. And, Thursday is going to be special because the Bisons are kind enough to share their facility with us for all the games. So it's a great opportunity for the two organizations to come together and really celebrate what Mike's been able to do. So it's going to be a fun week coming up here tomorrow and Thursday for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome for Mike Sarant. What a run he's had with the brown and gold there on campus. And should mention Saturday's a big night as well. Homestand continues. It's the Pink the Rink night presented by Cambrian as in support of anti-bullying. Fans are recommended to wear pink. The first 500 are going to get rally towels, a special themed jersey, an auction following the game. And I know that anti-bullying program has been a big focus of the Ice ever since they got to Winnipeg, Munzie.
No doubt. I saw the jerseys here. They just popped into town. They're fantastic. I know the kids are obviously excited to see the Ice players wear those. And, it's what we talked about earlier on, getting the players out of the community and being role models, not only as hockey players, but as young men around. And I know the off-ice crew, our office crew, put a little video together here. I think Owen Peterson, Daniel Hauser, and Matthew Savoy are in it. So if you get a chance to check out the Ice social media channels, you'll see the guys having some fun with it, but obviously also spreading a very important message.
Yeah, you got it. Make sure you're following the Ice on Twitter and other social channels. Some great ticket deals coming up. And, of course, the Ice starting off this homestand tomorrow night, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday this week. And if you get out there, you'll see the cream of the crop right now in the Western Hockey League, one of the top teams in all Canadian junior hockey. Munzie, best of luck to the lads this week. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Huss. Thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
All right. Lots of love from Munzie in the chat. Great to see Ice Wednesday, Thursday at home, and then again on the weekend for the anti-bullying game. Wear pink on Saturday night out to the Ice Cave. All right. Big thanks to Brian Munz, and a big thanks to our friends at Royal Sports for their continued support of Winnipeg Sports Talk since day one. Some big milestones coming up for us, and Royal Sports has been with us every step of the way. And why wouldn't they? They are the #1 sports store, really central Canada, although I'd put them up pound for pound against any sports store in the entire country and most of the United States as well. They are the hockey superstore with the biggest selection of hockey equipment, sticks, and more, all at great prices, and the fan headquarters for whatever you're looking for. Thousands of pieces of Winnipeg Jets merchandise, tons of exclusives, Winnipeg Blue Bombers, NFL, CFL, every team in the National Hockey League represented, and so much more, including Raptors, Major League Baseball, and of course, international soccer as well. Whatever you're looking for, Royal Sports has you covered. Pop down and see them, 750 Pembina Highway, and make sure to follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. Guys, if you're thinking about needing to upgrade that wardrobe as we get a little more into 2023, head on down to F Apparel and see the experts at 190 Smith Street, featuring custom suits starting at just $400 in Winnipeg's best, most stylish selection of menswear, including custom shirts meant to be both tucked and untucked, golf pants, chinos, and more, and the best selection of men's accessories. If you're involved in a wedding party or getting married next year, don't have the fellas rent tuxes and have to bring them back after the weekend. Get custom suits at F Apparel and take advantage of their great wedding party special, where everyone will save 15% off on their custom suits from F Apparel. They can wear them into the future and not just for one day. And if you got a 2023 grad in the family that's looking to move on from high school to a next chapter of their life, the young man will need a suit. Custom suits for 2023 grads will include a free custom shirt and tie. Find out more in person at F Apparel, 190 Smith Street downtown, or check them out online or make an appointment at F Apparel, EPHapparel.com. And with another full slate of games tonight after a very slow weekend, and it being gorgeous outside, maybe it's time to break out of the house for a night, huh? head on down to your local Boston Pizza, gather with the gang, enjoy their great daily specials, ice-cold schooners, delicious Boston wings, gourmet pizzas, and more. And if you can't make it out to BP, you can always order online at bostonpizza.com. All right, let's get Mike McIntyre in here to check up on what he's up to on this Jets off week, although it's going to get busy starting on Saturday when the team is back to host the Chicago Blackhawks, a late one, 9 p.m. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Huss. Looking forward to getting back to the NHL beat. But I've enjoyed kind of dabbling in a few other topics and sports. I wrote about curling yesterday. That's
you know what? I love that piece. And listen, we're big fans of Jen Jones, of course. What hasn't she done? She really has done it all. But one of my favorite interviews of last year was sitting down with her and Mackenzie Zacharias out of Princess Auto when they were announcing their sponsored teams. And it was just so much fun. Like the youthful energy of Mackenzie and her sister combined with the,
veteran savvy.
Yeah, the incredible unmatched experience and accomplishments of Jen Jones has really created one of the most fascinating teams I think we've seen in recent curling history. They roll through the Manitoba Scotties. They're back at the event right now. And, you make a pretty compelling argument that Jen Jones could be the greatest athlete that Manitoba has ever produced. Although I know that probably brings out quite a few emails from a curling isn't a sport guy who I'm sure was well represented in the inbox when you gave Jennifer Jones her just desserts as one of the best that's ever done it as an athlete of any type from our province.
Yeah, two arguments I've heard today from the anti-curling, anti-Jen Jones crowd. One is that the curling's not a sport, they say. And to that, I would then say, well, would you also lump, say, golf? Like, is Tiger Woods not a great athlete? Because if you're going to boil it down to the amount of physical exertion, I mean, you could even make the argument, a baseball player who maybe is a DH, like he just stands there and takes his cuts. Is he not an athlete either? So to me, that argument kind of falls well short. Then there's she's the skip, so it's the least athletic. And I've heard that from some people, to which some interesting arguments, people saying, well, let's use the football comparison then. Does that then disqualify a Tom Brady, for example, versus, a running back or a wide receiver or even an O-lineman? Like if you're just going to boil it down to what requires the most physical exertion or, physical skill, I think you're really splitting hairs in terms of defining what an athlete is. To me, at the end of the day, Jennifer Jones, I don't think anyone would dispute she's the best curler this province has ever produced. Her track record speaks for itself. But she's also playing in, at an extremely high level in a sport that is worldwide now. Like there is a global surge in curling. And she's, competing regularly at the highest levels. She's going for a 7th national championship at the Scotties next week. And she'll be aiming for a 3rd world championship. She's Olympic gold medalist. So, I think for a lot of reasons, I'm not saying she is the greatest athlete, although she'd be right near the top of my list. And this province, look, we produced no shortage, Cindy Clausen, Clara Hughes, all kinds of hockey players from Terry Sawchuk, Jonathan Toews, Bobby Clark, golfers like George Knudsen. Like there's a really impressive list, but I think you have to include Jennifer Jones. And, I wanted to provoke discussion with the column, and I guess mission accomplished on that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I'll throw our girl Des Scott in there as well, who unfortunately has surgery and is actually going to keep her out of the Kansas City lineup and out of Canada's lineup for a little while, but did say on Instagram she's going to be back soon. But yeah, of course, Clara Hughes and Cindy Clausen, both Olympic legends in their own right. And Clara, multiple medalists in winter and summer games.
It just isn't done. It really isn't.
Exactly. It certainly is a fun conversation, folks. Check that piece out in the Winnipeg Free Press. Slow on the Jets beat for the few days, but I guess they're going to be coming back on Thursday. And it'll have a couple days of practice and then that sort of bizarre 9 p.m. game. And you know what? I will say this, Mike, if there was ever going to be a game at 9 p.m. on the schedule, this might be the best time to have it, considering the team has been off. They're not in any sort of a routine whatsoever.
Oh.
I'm not sure. And I'd imagine they might even stagger practice times away from what they normally have been. And then they'll have a couple more days to get ready for the Kraken on Valentine's Day in a game that I don't think a lot of people would be expecting it. We might be welcoming in the first place team in the Pacific Division this deep into the season.
Yeah, for sure. And, the Jets, but I don't know if anyone's looked at the schedule, but the Blackhawks are actually playing on Friday night as well. So the Jets are getting the Blackhawks on a back-to-back.
Where, in Mini?
I believe they're actually, we just got a doorbell ringing here. So we're going to get a little chaos from the
Figured that would be the case. Don't worry, folks.
Memo to anybody thinking of breaking into the McIntyre household,
Yeah.
as you just heard, it would not be a good idea.
Some good security.
I think it's just a package, an Amazon package being delivered. But I believe, actually, I think the Blackhawks are at home, Huss, if I recall.
I'll tell you right now. Oh, yes, the Battle of the Titans, Coyotes, Blackhawks, 7:30 in Chicago on Friday night, and then they'll travel to Winnipeg, presumably after the game. Or maybe they won't, considering the game is so late on Saturday.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they could wake up and they go to sleep in their own beds. Heck, they could have the morning skate in Chicago and still fly in with plenty of time. But yeah, I mean, the Jets, looking at some of their Instagram stories, like they've scattered around the globe. I think Nikolai Ehlers actually went home to Denmark. There's a bunch of guys, on tropical vacations. So they're going to skate on Thursday, but not till 2 p.m. That's a bit of an unusual practice time for the Jets. I imagine part of that is to give players a little extra time to get back into town, but also maybe because of the game on Saturday, like they're almost have to reset the internal clock a bit. But they'll have 2 days to kind of sweat the pina coladas and the margaritas that they've no doubt enjoyed over the last week or so here. And, Huss, if last night's games were any indication, last night was the return of the NHL after the All-Star break, and the teams playing last night, they've already now had their player break. So, everybody that was in action last night and again tonight, these are teams that kind of like the Jets are going to have had about 9 or 10 days off. I don't know if you watched much action last night.
Oh, I did.
There was some tremendous hockey. Like, it was really, really exciting. I was kind of flipping back and forth between the Vancouver game, the Vancouver, New Jersey game, and the Calgary. The Calgary game might have been the best game of the year in terms of excitement and physicality. I mean, that was like playoff hockey. Jacob Trouba was an assassin last night.
We spent the first 20 minutes of the show talking about it. I mean, he completely clean hits, but as hard as it comes. And, it was funny. We were kind of looking in and, the analytics people not as high on Trouba's season so far. But my God, you want to talk about making an impact. And, I mean, they went and scored on the power play right after his second fight, which, of course, he had to throw down because he made a devastating clean hit, which is another topic entirely. But my God, was he getting guys in the tracks last night? And Calgary, of all the teams in the National Hockey League, Calgary's not going to sit there and let their guys get hit, even if it costs a couple minutes in the box. And it just created an amazing atmosphere, a back and forth game that had hits, fights, goals. It was everything people wanted to. But interestingly enough, and I'll be interested to get your take on this. If you look at the condensed game that the NHL put out, none of that stuff even made it. And even in the NHL.com write-up about the game, no mention of it. Is that by design, or is that just a complete overlooking? Hi, Piper.
Yeah, Piper saying hi to the Winnipeg Sports Talk viewers here. Folks listening on the podcast, you're going to miss out on her cuteness.
Here comes the chat. Here comes the Piper emojis in the chat.
No, it's by design, Huss. The NHL wants to, it's just ridiculous. So the league, they haven't eliminated fighting. They haven't banned fighting, but they want to sanitize it from their reports, even though what everybody will talk about out of last night's game were the big hits, the obvious fights that ensued. And then to just make that disappear from the video. I think it was like an 8-minute video highlight package that somehow doesn't include any of that. It's ridiculous. Like, if you're trying to sell that game to fair weather fans, you got to include that, because that would be captivating, I would think, in kind of the same way people watch NASCAR for the car wrecks. There was some car wrecks last night in that Flames game. But yeah, it's by design, that's for sure. I mean, the NHL, I don't think they know what they're doing half the time. And they certainly don't do the best job at times of promoting, the sport. And that's a classic example. But my point being with the game, like, geez, we could be in for, like, you're never sure what to expect when teams have had a long break. I'm all for chaos. And if we get some run and gun, wide open hockey, I'm sure the coaches won't be very happy, but it could be a lot of fun. And so Saturday night, for example, I imagine, Huss, the atmosphere at Canada Life's going to be pretty good. There will be some fans who've had a few by 9 p.m.
Oh, it's going to be the most buzz crowd of the year, guaranteed.
For sure. And the Blackhawks always bring out, the original six. Like, they have a following, so you'll have that crowd there. Jets fans have lots of reasons to be excited about their team. And again, Chicago's a team, like, what are they playing for? They're terrible. They're not good defensively. Like, this could be, watch it be a 2-1 snoozer or something. This could be like a 7-5 barn burner with all kinds of craziness, especially because Chicago's going to be playing for a second time. Like, they might not even have a whole lot in the tank after a long break and then back-to-backs. So yeah, it could be a fun one. And I'm sure Rick Bowness will be preaching, all the usual defensive awareness and whatnot. But hey, I'm all for his players just kind of going out, dropping the puck and playing.
Well, the fact that they had this player break, I think the team really needed it. We went through the schedule over the last couple months. Just how much they've been playing, and we saw the way that they were sort of wilting there in that final week. But I guarantee that atmosphere around the guys getting back together will be a lot more upbeat after they all got a chance to get away and have a little bit of fun, get some sun. But also, I think it all goes back to that third period last week ago, Monday, against the against the St. Louis Blues, when Josh Morrissey put that team on his back. And then, of course, Josh went out and had a real nice weekend at the All-Star game. Not only showing off some pretty dapper outfits, the pink suit and whatnot, but also getting, recognized as one of the top defensemen of the league. And, I just think back of that week for Josh. The goals, the win, the putting the team on his back, then being a part of that All-Star game. You really do hope that, from the sounds of it, it meant a lot to him. It certainly did mean a lot to Connor Hellebuyck to be included in that. And that they can sort of build even more confidence going into these final games after what's happened over the course of this break.
Let me throw this out. Jets getting the respect they did outside of this market. And I go back and forth sometimes on this. I saw today ESPN, they put out their latest award votes, I guess. They commissioned a panel. And they didn't have Connor Hellebuyck or Josh Morrissey in either the Norris or the Vezina. Now, they gave them sort of honorable mention outside the top 5. I don't know. To me, both those guys have to be, I'd have them both in the top 3 right now if voting happened today. But, ESPN, and it wasn't just one writer who put this together. There was a bit of a vote, I guess, by committee. But interesting that neither guy is in the top 5 right now based on, their poll of other ESPN writers. Rick Bowness was in the top 3, by the way, on Jack Adams. But they had him trailing Jim Montgomery. Jim Montgomery, they had lapping the field, and I guess deservedly so. The Bruins are kind of lapping the field in terms of the NHL. But I don't know. Hellebuyck and Morrissey, they certainly got a big spotlight this past weekend at the All-Star game. Both guys had nice showings. Morrissey finished third in the harder shot, had a nice assist in the All-Star game. Hellebuck, he won the, along with UC Saros, won the Tendy Tandem. But what is going on here?
How many packages did you buy? Like, did you buy it all separately or did you put it in one? I mean, it's just one Amazon guy after another coming up to your front door.
I'm starting to wonder if maybe the back door didn't close properly and it's just swinging against the doorbell now. That's more the likely cause now that I think of it. One more ring and I may have to go take a quick timeout to investigate that. But it strikes me that maybe the Jets, they still are a team that people are sleeping on a little bit, and the players on the Jets. And look, the Jets probably don't mind it that way, right? This is a team that has often talked about feeling overlooked, and the proverbial chip on their shoulder. I don't think anybody was expecting a whole lot of the Jets going into this season, and they've certainly raised the bar through their own play. But maybe the best thing for this team is to still have people doubting them or thinking that they're not necessarily legit or for real, and even overlooking some of the individual accomplishments on the team. That might ultimately fuel these guys, as they go down the stretch here. But it's interesting to see what the global media and how they view the Jets, because I think here in Winnipeg, we're almost used to what some of these guys like Morrissey and Hellebuck have done this year.
Well, it's a great point. And listen, I mean, ESPN, is in the States. I don't know who the voters were and who they were polling, but I would imagine they skew far more American. I mean, If you go through that entire piece, the only two individuals from Canadian teams that even find themselves in those top three is Connor McDavid for MVP. And I mean, if you didn't have Connor McDavid at the top of that list, you should probably have your credentials revoked. And Rick Bowness. And at least the bonus, at least people are paying attention a little bit more to Rick Bowness, because that was the case earlier on this season. I mean, I lost it for 2 or 3 days on this program at the disrespect being shown at Bones with the job that he's done. But listen, there's one way to get people to notice, and that's have a great final 30 games and, finish where they are right now, which is right near the top of the Central Division. As far as the Morrissey, he got an honorable mention. They have Cale Makar, Erik Karlsson, and Rasmus Dahlin ahead of him. And I mean, I think all of those guys.
Fox, I think as well, they mentioned as being.
Oh, well, listen, they're not missing out the opportunity to get someone on the New York Rangers in that conversation. No. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But for a team, and honestly, even the bookies, Mike, I mean, one of the best ways I think to really see what reality is check the odds board. And I mean, right now, you can get the Jets at plus 450 to win the Central Division. I mean, they're right there at the top right now. I mean, their cup odds are below a number of teams like the Calgary Flames that aren't even in the playoff, aren't even above the playoff line right now. So, I mean, listen, it's a benefit. I never complain when we're getting better odds on the team, but it does speak to the fact that barring doing something incredible or finally getting to that postseason when people really do pay attention to the rest of the league, a lot of people have been sleeping on the Winnipeg Jets all season long. We're 52 games in. There's 30 games to go. And listen, if that can be something that helps the team with a little bit of us against the world mentality, I'm sure Rick Bowness will try to maximize it going forward when he gets his team here. Bottom line is there's a lot of work to be done, but man, they put themselves in a great position as they get ready to resume the season coming up later on this week.
Yeah, and the NHL season has, which we talk about being a marathon, not a sprint. Well, newsflash, it's about to become a sprint because these last 30 games starting Saturday, I believe they're going to be played over a 62-game stretch. So days off are going to become few and far between. The team's basically playing every other day starting Saturday, right down the stretch. They do have some back-to-backs, which means they'll have some 2-day breaks in between games as well. But, there's a big sprint to the finish line. And of course, all eyes will now turn, now that the All-Star break's behind us, to the upcoming trade deadline, which is only 3 weeks from this Friday. And I believe, Huss, correct me if I'm wrong here, if I did the math, but I believe the Jets only have 10 games between now and the trade deadline. So they have 30 games left this season, 10 to the trade deadline, and then 20 post-trade deadline. And I'll tell you one way the Jets can get a lot of attention beyond this market is if Kevin Cheveldayoff steps up to the plate and belts a big home run, and a guy like Timo Meier, for example, whose name remains out there. We've talked about him. I know you've talked a lot on the show about a guy like Meier and what he could bring to the Jets, also what he might cost. And I go back to what I keep saying, sounding like a broken record, but this is the year for Kevin Cheveldayoff and company to take that big swing. And we're getting down to crunch time now, where it will be very interesting. I'll tell you this, Huss, I will be watching very closely over these next couple of weeks who's scouting the Jets, who the Jets are scouting, because sometimes that's just as telling. Like, this is the time of the year where you keep an eye on who's watching who, because, teams are starting to finalize some of the decisions that are going to be made. Interesting that one potential trade piece, I thought, for the Jets, if you're talking about a prospect that they might dangle, I think you and I talked a couple weeks ago about a guy like Chaz Lucius, who you could sell high on, right? He's coming off the World Junior, and then was lighting up the dub. Unfortunately, Chaz Lucius, who's proven to be a bit injury prone so far in his young career, just suffered a season-ending injury this past weekend in Portland. And I suppose he could still be a trade piece, because if a team trading for him, you're not trading for a guy to step in and help your team today. But you do wonder if another injury and surgery, if that negates his value a little bit. That's one thing to keep an eye on.
Well, it's not It's not helping. And he's going to have 18 games of regular season action this year. 12 for the Moose, 6 for Portland. And luckily, did have a real strong World Juniors, so right. Everyone would have been there scouting him as well. And you just have to have the faith. The good thing is it wasn't a recurring injury of something that had happened before. But man, he's like the walking epitome of Murphy's Law right now, although maybe he's getting them all out earlier and he'll be an Iron Man once he gets to the National Hockey League at some point. I'm with you on that. And Brad Lambert, you may as well promote this. I know that you're going to have a chat with Big Bad Brad and have that coming up in the Free Press as well. And he'd be another player that I think would be very intriguing to many in and around the National Hockey League.
Yeah, I'm talking to Brad Lambert later today and have the story in tomorrow's Free Press. And actually, I'd set up interviews with Lambert and Lucius, and then Lucius got hurt. So I had my fingers crossed that Lambert survived the weekend unscathed.
We're taking away your phone and putting you in a different department of the paper if something happens to Lambert before you.
McIntyre curse. But yeah, Brad Lambert has, he's adjusted very nicely, it would appear. And Huss, I don't know if you saw over the weekend, the Seattle WHL team that Lambert's a part of, they just got Dylan Gunther. They are absolutely loaded. And wouldn't it be a lot of fun if we could watch Big Bad Brad here in Winnipeg in May, maybe against the Ice in the Western Hockey League final?
We just talked to Munzy about what's coming up with the Ice, and I was sort of looking at the standings and projecting. There is absolutely a possibility that Connor Bedard and the Regina Pats could be the Ice's first round opponent in the playoffs.
Right.
And if they move forward and win the East, I think a high probability that those Seattle Thunderbirds with Gunther and Lambert could very well be the opposition in a potential WHL final.
Throw in a lengthy Jets playoff run this spring, maybe the Moose having a nice run, and my goodness, Huss, we could have a wealth of fun spring hockey in this market, the likes of which we haven't seen for maybe ever. It would be a ton of fun to cover, that's for sure.
No doubt about that. Hey, let's get back to Saturday for a minute, because it is the Blackhawks that'll be coming in, and of course we've spent a lot of time talking about Jonathan Toews. I know that Timo Meier is the apple of the eye of pretty much fans of every team that's looking to add a player at the deadline. I think he's clearly all around the number one player, and obviously an RFA as well, even though a very, very high price tag on the qualifying offer for next year. But you think this will be a little different with Chicago coming in than normal, considering the perceived interest of Winnipeg and the potential of him leaving Chicago at the deadline and how he might fit in with this Jets lineup?
Absolutely. Like, this could be the final time, likely is the final time regardless, because he's a UFA. This is the last visit from the Hawks this season. So, how many times have we watched Jonathan Toews skate with Chicago here at the rink? And there's a very good chance that the next time we see Toews, he's wearing someone else's jersey. Now, could it be a Winnipeg Jets jersey? Certainly could be. Not out of the realm of possibility. Another guy, so I'll be keeping an eye on him. Your fans will as well, to kind of see how he looks. Interesting that there's been a lot of chatter kind of really heating up lately about Max Domi, a guy that we know the Jets have long had interest in. Max Domi is also a UFA, pending UFA this summer, and he comes with a much, much cheaper price tag than Jonathan Toews, who's making 10.5. Max Domi's making just $3 million. He's also 7 years younger, and Max Domi's leading the Blackhawks in scoring. And he's a guy that can play up and down the lineup, add some sandpaper, some grit. He's a guy that, keeping an eye on Max Domi as well on Saturday night, just to kind of see what his game looks like. Because he's a guy that potentially the Jets very much could be in on, depending on what the price is. It should be, for a lot of reasons, it'll be a game that has a lot of extra spice, a lot of extra interest to me, and I'm sure to fans.
Well, just one more thing on the deadline. We're going to talk about, it's interesting. And I know you're heading on the road after these 2 games at home to Seabus and then those 3 games at NYC.
Yeah.
The Jets are going to come home for the Avalanche, Islanders, and Kings heading into March, and then have a back-to-back with the Edmonton Oilers. What's crazy about this is the road game on that Friday happens to be trade deadline day, and then they're right back in it on the 4th at home against the Oilers. And then, you got a home game against the San Jose Sharks. But then, Mike, Wild, at Panthers, at Lightning, at Carolina Hurricanes, home to Boston. I think, regardless of what they do at that deadline, you're going to look at that period of 6-7 games right out of the deadline as maybe the biggest sustained test for the Winnipeg Jets through the regular season. And who knows, if the team is significantly different, might not be the best time to work guys through, but it'd be a fascinating early start to the month of March, considering what could happen at the beginning of the month with the deadline. And then I think some pretty great tests for the Winnipeg Jets to see how ready they are to take on the NHL's best come playoff time.
Yeah, and so if you're the Jets, you hope not only that you're healthy in terms of your current roster, but that you've also beefed up a little bit at the trade deadline. And it would be a really interesting test to kind of see what, assuming they're in a bit of a new look team, how they can hold up against some of the heavyweights in the NHL. Because you're right, that's a really tough schedule. And, again, if you're the Jets, you want to make some hay here while you can. You look at just coming out of the break here, Huss, the Jets get the Blackhawks. They're not a good team. They get Seattle, and yes, Seattle is surprising a lot of people. So that'll be a tough test next Tuesday. Then they go to Columbus, who are also terrible. Like, there's a chance, and the Jets, of course, won going into the break. There's a chance to kind of hit the ground running here if they could, get these 2 home games and then go into Columbus. And the 3 games in New York, we know those are going to be tough tests. All 3 of those teams, the Rangers are very good. The Devils are very good. And the Islanders just got Bo Horvat, and they're desperate to kind of climb back into the playoff race. So these next 3 games for the Jets, the Hawks, the Kraken, and Columbus, if you're the Jets, you'd really like to get all 3 of those if you could, because you want to get those points where you can, because there are some tough games coming up for sure. And hey, the Jets have their sights set. Again, they're well past the point of just trying to squeak in as a wild card team. They want to win their division. Dallas won last night in a shootout. Dallas, I think, is going to play 1 or 2 more times here before the Jets get back at it Saturday. And so the Jets, no doubt, will want to try and reduce that deficit that the Stars have and get right back in the hunt for the Central Division title.
No doubt about it. Well, Mike, we'll have a fun time. We wait a couple extra days, and then the Jets will be back. We'll have plenty to talk about heading into the 3rd of March, and we'll look forward to doing it with you. Thanks for doing this. You might just want to go hang out around your back door. I figured
I'm
we've
gonna
got
go check
about
that
2 minutes
doorbell.
before someone
Hopefully
else.
there's not just some guy standing there all this time, because he'd be. I mean, I know it's nice out today, but he'd be pretty cold.
Staring down Piper. Thanks for doing this, buddy.
All right,
we'll look
thanks.
forward to tomorrow's piece with your chat with Brad Lambert in the Freep.
You bet. Huss, take care. Enjoy the week.
Good stuff. There's Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press. Ooh, I like that he added in that "Go Chiefs." Agree with him on that. Of course, we were talking a little Jen Jones, hoping to get Jen on before the Scotties on the program. Of course, a proud member of Team Princess Auto, along with Team Reed Carruthers as well on the curling scene. Princess Auto, great supporters of curling from coast to coast in Canada, as well as the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and Winnipeg Gold Eyes right here in the Peg. And Princess Auto is the spot where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. 2 Winnipeg locations, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, and you can always shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. If you need water services for your family or home, you know where to go for that. 65 years in the business, family owned. It is the great people over at Culligan Water. And they really do have everything you could possibly need when it comes to water softeners, filters, bottled water coolers, whole home systems, drinking water systems, and so much more, not to mention citywide water delivery services and commercial and industrial water products and solutions. Pop by and see them at 1200 Sargent Avenue. You can give them a buzz at 694-5180 or check out everything they can do for you and your family online at drinkculligan.com. And we had a great chat with Nick Dembski yesterday on the program, who re-signed with a 3-year deal with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And with the weather getting a little bit nicer outside, we can start counting down the days to Bomber training camp. Well, we'll get into CFL Free Agency as well. Maybe have a little bit on that at the end of the show. An interesting report from Justin Dunk on a former Bomber that might look good back in blue and gold. One thing I do know is that when the Bombers are back, so will the fans. And we'll be hitting that rum hut for some of the great taste of Canadian Club. And, of course, Canadian Club of Ginger Ale, which was such a popular beverage sold in cans at the stadium this year. Pick up Canada's favorite Canadian whiskey, the original Canadian Club, available at your local Manitoba liquor marts. And a big thanks to Canadian Club for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. All right, Super Bowl coming up on Sunday. Waste Management Open, which is looking like a major, teeing off on Thursday. What a great day to welcome in my good friend Geoff Feinberg to Winnipeg Sports Talk. Feinberg, how are you, buddy? What is going on? You ready for the big game and this big tourney this week?
I'm ready for the big tourney. I'm ready for the big game. Like most of the times, I'm honestly just as much ready for the big game to just be over, so the league calendar can flip. Not all of us are as privileged as you, Hustler.
Well, listen, we're not going to get into the demise of the Chargers.
No,
I will
we're not.
say this. I will say this, though. I am interested in your perspective just on the AFC West. Lots going on right now. Sean Payton, although, I don't know when the next time the Broncos are going to actually make a first-round pick. It might be a while, but they do have a legitimate head coach. And then we'll see what happens with the Raiders. But whatever's left of Aaron Rodgers, the sandbagger Aaron Rodgers, may end up in Oakland. What's more interesting, his NFL future, the fact that everyone in the golf world thinks he's a cheater after with a stunt that he pulled at Pebble Beach on the weekend?
Yeah, and just the player Ben Silverman is from about 10, 15 minutes down the road from
he just
where
won the Corn Ferry Tour the weekend before.
Yeah, just went on the Corn Ferry, gets his little hiccup with Rodgers. That caused a lot of controversy in the little.
Just fill people in on what it is, because I should have done that beforehand. But
Aaron Rodgers and the Canadian Ben Silverman win the Pro-Am aspect at Pebble Beach this week. It looks cool. It makes a lot of sense until you realized Aaron Rodgers apparently played this tournament with a handicap of 10. If you've ever watched Aaron Rodgers golf just for 25 minutes, you'd probably think that guy's not a 10. And, so deep diving, apparently he's a registered 3 in Wisconsin for a handicap. He wins. And even, the guys who finished second place, which I believe was Keith Mitchell and Bills quarterback Josh Allen, you'd think it was a joke if you watched Keith Mitchell's press conference after, but he was dead serious. and calling out Rogers and being like, no, they should give the trophy to somebody else. That's ridiculous. Never really seen that come out of the pro-am aspect of Pebble Beach, but it's created, I don't know, it's created nothing, I guess, really, but just something for us to blab about. But it also shows you why, like, amateur golf can be pretty, like, scuzzy in certain levels.
It's a gentleman's game. I mean, your word and your honor is everything in golf, and there's a lot of golf hardos that have lost a lot of respect for the potentially soon to be former quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. Do you think he ends up in Oakland? I did laugh at Tim, our good friend Tim Anderson on the pod, referring to Aaron Rodgers' Super Bowl as his first Super Bowl championship, thinking that he's going to end up with the Jets. He'll, of course, he loves the drama and he'll be a central figure. He's not doing anything to calm it down right now as we get into Super Bowl week.
Yeah, and there's a lot of roller coasters. Honestly, these sort of things, Hustler, whether it's right or not wrong, I sort of pay attention to the odds. When that conversation with Tim you were referencing a week ago, the Jets were the favorites to land Aaron Rodgers, right about probably a minus 120. Today, I'm seeing minus 400, minus 450 to the Raiders on that stuff. And I know those odds are probably all moved by speculation and a news report of the day. But there's a lot of wind now blowing that it could be the AFC West. So bring in Peyton, bring in Rodgers. The Chiefs will be fine. It'll get interesting. I guess all that hype that never really lived up to the AFC West last offseason will start again this offseason.
That would be I mean, there was a ton of hype going into that season, and it was entirely underwhelming. And I mean, I know you're still bent about what happened in the playoffs with the Chargers. At least they were there. I mean, the Raiders and the Denver Broncos were two just disasters this year. And the Denver thing, I mean, they're going to be paying for this for a long time. They really had no choice but to double down on it, and that's why Peyton is here. You know, you said to me when the Chiefs traded Tyreek Hill to the Dolphins that this was actually going to work out just fine with Kansas City. They were going to have all these picks, they'd restock, reload, and they would be just fine. Are you surprised that it happened as soon as it did and the Chiefs are back in the big game representing the AFC?
I mean, would I have bet on it? No, because you just saw all those young guys ready to dethrone them. And, you know, the NFL were sort of frothing at the mouth for, I don't want to say the next big thing, because Mahomes is the thing. He's so much better. He's so good, so fast that some level of fatigue, it seems like, has already been created in that respect. And as Chiefs fans, sometimes you find it insulting, but I don't know. It seems like you should just enjoy your place. But did I expect Tyreek Hill to have the season he had specifically with the Dolphins? No. But did I tell every Chiefs fan I knew that I don't understand the emotional aspect of a player winning a Super Bowl for you, doing everything Tyreek Hill did for you, and then leaving? But as an outsider, to me, it was an incredible move by the Chiefs. It let them reset everything. There's only so many guys you can pay. And between Andy Reid and Mahomes, everything would be fine. And you can't be a good contending team and not have draft picks in the NFL. You can't have a quarterback on his second contract and not have draft picks in the NFL, which is a big conundrum for a lot of these teams that now are trading all their assets or being asked to for the quarterbacks, right, Huss? Because as we've seen, especially with the Chiefs this year, the abundance of picks just allowed them to, just add a little Jenga block in every little nick and cranny on the roster. 3 rookies in the secondary. Karlaftis making impacts. Guys playing for virtually, I don't want to say nothing, but in NFL terms, nothing on those rookie deals. I told you it would allow you to set the stage for Mahomes Reid 2.0, and year one of 2.0, you're back in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'll admit, I mean, I was optimistic the Chiefs would still be a contender, but there were some other big teams. It was the demise of the Bills, frankly, that surprised me the most. And I don't know how much that had to do with Josh Allen's injury. The loss of Von Miller, I thought, was massive. I mean, the way that they just couldn't get to Joe Burrow. But back to your conversation about the contracts and whatnot, we're going to see how Cincinnati deals with this right now going forward. Because, of course, very soon Joe Burrow's going to need a deal. And T. Higgins is up right now. He apparently wants 20 to 25 next year. They've got Jamar Chase as their number one guy. There's going to be some real tough decisions with the Bengals, who, may very well go into next season or a couple years and look back at that game in Kansas City a couple of weeks ago as their best chance to get back to the big game and win the whole thing.
Yeah, we will see. They'll have decisions to make, and the earlier they make it, the more they can get in return. We've seen, the Titans inexplicably traded AJ Brown last year for the reasons that the Bengals certainly do not have. And the Joe Burrow contract, it's probably going to set the stage for the future of quarterbacks and guaranteed money. Although if I'm a Bengals or a Bengals fan, I wouldn't, just as a fan of other sports, I wouldn't be concerned at all if I have to give Joe Burrow 5 years and $250 million guaranteed. Or as a Charger fan, nothing, if the Chargers have to give Justin Herbert 5 years and, a few less dollars than Joe Burrow guaranteed, that wouldn't bother me one bit. I think they've just shown on and off the field that they're worth it. They don't bring the injury concerns that maybe Lamar does. And you hear they're $100 million apart. And that's just unfathomable, Hustler. I mean, you've tried to buy a house, you could be a couple $100,000 apart, and maybe we could find some wiggle room. But $100 million, I mean, that's also going to be a trade. It feels like destined.
Yeah, well, and where Lamar Jackson ends up, I think, is going to be a huge story coming out of the Super Bowl and into the next couple months of the NFL offseason that never, ever really stops. As far as the game goes, we do have a great matchup. The number one teams on both sides. It's been pretty much steady around 1.5 in favor of the Eagles. I wouldn't be surprised now that we're getting some better news on some of the Chiefs' injuries if that gets closer to a pick 'em. What do you make of the game and the matchup for Sunday?
There's nothing methodical about my handicapping here, Hustler. And it's I love seeing the one seeds play each other. That's fun. We don't get it enough in sports. Especially as hockey fans, you love the Cinderella and upsets in the playoffs and all the uncertainty that all those brackets can bring. I like 1 versus 1. I enjoy when we get 1 versus 1. I love a 1 versus 1 with a point spread of 1. That's great. That's exciting. And we have the best roster in football with the best war roster in football by a landslide in the Philadelphia Eagles when you exclude quarterback. Now, the highest war quarterback in football is Patrick Mahomes. So it is just such a great matchup with so many great storylines, the Reed stuff, the Kelsey stuff. Even as a disgruntled fan of other teams, it's easy to see and to be excited about this. All that being said, Huss, from a betting perspective, it's not going to be a huge bet for me. But I'm still a sports fan and I care about things, and I'm not betting on a division rival to win a Super Bowl. I'm just not. So I'll swallow the point or whatever it is. I haven't made a bet yet, but I will bet on the Eagles. And my logic for doing so is quite simple.
Do you think that this will get closer to a pick 'em? I mean, put it this way. If you were going to bet the Chiefs, the time to bet it now. And if you're betting the Eagles, it might be better to wait a couple days and see if we might get closer to a straight up pick 'em. I think most people are going to be betting the money line on this. I mean, 1 point is 1 point when you get to it. I mean, Philly right now, I'm looking at minus 122. Could that get closer to a minus 110, even minus 115, do you think?
Yeah, I guess is maybe, I haven't bet the game yet, and I don't consider myself a sharp or a pro, so I'll put myself in this pile, although I think I am betting the Eagles. The casual money hasn't hit the board yet, and if people know Mahomes is healthy, that might just be all they need, and the same reason you just would bet Brady in the Super Bowl. Right? I mean, I know they played each other recently, haha, but, it's just an easy bet. I'll tell you, when you don't bet Patrick Mahomes as an underdog in the Super Bowl, it could be one of those Super Bowls, or even 15 years from now, you're thinking, how dumb am I? Remember when Mahomes was an underdog in the Super Bowl and I played the other side? A lot of the Super Bowls, they'll blur together. They all jumble. But you'll remember being on the other side of Mahomes as an underdog as he's being, I don't know that he'll do the longevity, but he's quickly becoming the greatest. He's the greatest player on planet Earth right now. And where he wants to stand all time is to be determined, but he's hosted 5 straight AFC title games on that path. Again, to my point, you will not enjoy the feeling spending your whole life every year of the Super Bowl, remembering when you bet against Mahomes as a dog, but that's something I'm going to do. I'm not very bright.
I know that you and Pat and Tim will be chopping it up with a whole bunch of picks for the big game over at the Mayo Media Network. Have you paid attention much to props? Is there anything you had an early jump on, or when it comes to the game on Sunday, outside of obviously the regular wager, who's going to win the game, the total, anything like that?
Yeah, I'll ream off a couple things off the top of my head fast that I have invested in or will invest in. I like under penalties. I played it at 10.5. That's self-explanatory after the nonsense from the other weeks. It's the last thing they want to do. Hopefully there's no like brouhaha that results in multiple personal fouls or something that could really push up a total. So I do like that. I like Mahomes over completions, Hustler. I like Mahomes over rushing yards in an elimination game. That number's really gone up. Now it's at about 20 on the rushing. I played it at 18. The completions, just a lot of dink and dunk, right? That's what you've been doing. That's what you're going to do. Yeah. A lot of little nibbles all over the place. I expect all night long. Devontae Smith would be the receiver on Philly that I think gets a lot of action on you guys. And I think it would correlate to maybe the Eagles winning, but there's no way the Eagles win and Mahomes doesn't throw a pick. So Mahomes to throw a pick is something you could think of. And let me run this by you because I'm all over it. And I've even mentioned it, and I couldn't even remember the name in the past, but it's the Super Bowl, so now I know the names. Noah Gray, over 10.5 receiving yards. You guys have burned my Chargers with that guy. Like, oh, are you little, two tight end nuts? You've burned so much to Kelsey. I have a full expectation you're going to burn them for a nice one too. So I'll be on the Noah Gray wagon for the Chiefs on Sunday.
Well, and the funny thing is that I think there'll be some more value on a player like that because it looks like, at least to begin the game, Juju's going to be there. He'll coming back. I mean, they're hopeful that Kadarius Toney will be there, and that will take a lot of the attention off some of those other guys that ended up being major factors when everyone else was down in the second half of the game. Geoff Feinberg is with us. Feinberg, the other thing that's happening this week, actually it's probably great for you to maybe keep your mind off of the game more than anything, is what's going to be going on at that Gong Show, the biggest keg party in sports, the Waste Management Phoenix Open. I heard you and Pat talk about this, and I couldn't agree more. This feels like a major already. And, with this elevated purse, the money that's going to be given out, this is one of the benefits to the guys that stuck around on the PGA Tour from everything's happening with LIV, is that we're getting a major-like field for this event. And, man, we know how special and how unique this event is. What a 4 days we've got coming up, in addition to finishing up with the Super Bowl after the final putts are made.
Yeah, ironically, also in that Phoenix Scottsdale area, housing not very cheap. A lot of golfers weren't too happy about the housing influx and pricing this week. But you mentioned it, $20 million purse, $3 million to first. This is what these elevated events may feel like this year, Hustler. But we alluded to it on the pod. It's the winter major. I mean, you look at this field, you're excited for the event. It's something that they might even want to brand themselves on top of that 16th hole going forward. It's got a nice little ring to it. So great field. Everyone is there. I will say that I have bet it irresponsibly. I am overexposed. My card construction looks like a major. We don't really get wild card winners in Phoenix pretty much ever at all, let alone now we have this field, 24 of the top 25 players in the world. Do I think that this thing's getting outside of 30 guys? No. There's about one on the outside fringes who I could share with you when we get there. But yeah, this is a big boy event. I would say bet it like you would bet a major. I'm not talking about irresponsible units like me. I mean more so in just stay to the top of the card.
Well, I think back to what Brooks famously said about the majors. We were going in, there's only, a couple dozen players that can win this event. And when I look at this tournament, with the amount of guys and how top heavy it is, even with the numbers that we don't normally see by some of these top players in the world, it's really hard to imagine that we're going to get past like a 35 or 40 to 1 number on a winner of this event, considering how many studs are going to be teeing it up on Thursday.
Yeah, we don't get long shots on tour anymore, period. let alone at events where everybody is there like this. So put it all together. I'm blessed in the sense that I'm going to have a huge Justin Jefferson Offensive Player of the Year ticket. I hopefully cash this weekend, fingers crossed. That's sort of why I've predetermined my overexposure. So I'll be in a real hole going into the Super Bowl potentially.
Hey, what number did you have on that Justin Jefferson?
24. I'm proud of it. If you golfed with me, if you spent a moment with me in the summer, like it was what I wanted to talk about. Like if you wanted to turn off Chargers radio, we were turning on Justin Jefferson radio.
Well, that was a hell of a bet, and I think that's coming through too. I'm waiting to cash that 8-1 Mahomes MVP.
Oh, what a bet. I'm a loser with a Herbert 10. That'll be a loser on that night. What an idiot. But hey, I'll have another one next year. I promise. I don't know any better.
John Rahm and Rory McIlroy. I'm looking at Coolbet right now. Plus 850 for Rahm. He was 9 yesterday. 9-1 for Rory. And then a bit of a gap before Scotty Scheffler comes in at 14. What do you make of the top two guys on the board? Rahm's been awesome so far this year. Rory just won overseas. How likely are we to be talking about the chalkiest of chalky finishes at this event?
It's very possible, and I'll be able to enjoy it as long as they don't burn one of my bets. If I was asked to make a pick there, Huss, it would have to be Rahm. I mean, Rory's a man on a mission, determined. We'll be talking about that showdown or that final putt versus Patrick Reed, probably when we do Christmas year in reviews. He's on a man on a mission. But Rahm is just, he loves this place. He's here since school. He almost even won here as an amateur. If I had to decipher between those two, it would be Rahm for me. I, though, use their presence here, both the clear-cut two best golfers in the world at this moment, to give us better odds up the board on other players I deem fantastic.
Well, exactly. So where do we go? I mean, a couple guys that intrigue me right off the bat, and actually we've already seen this number come down from when I was looking at yesterday. Colin Morikawa, who is in the 20s, he's looking at 18. I'm not as big on Xander Schauffele, but obviously other people are. He's at 16. But then you get into, we got to mention our guy, Tony Finau. And interestingly enough, there's a real correlation to guys that have played well, won a tournament or top 10 in earlier events this season before going to Waste Management and winning. And it's pretty hard to ignore Max Homa, who's been taking the baby swag to a new level with what he's done on tour so far this year.
Yeah, I mean, Max Homa is amazing. I love Max Homa. He should be commissioner. If he was commissioner, he's the best. Him in front of a microphone, him on a keyboard, him on a golf course. This number for me, though, maybe it's a bit of an overreaction. It's guys like Colin Morikawa who have my interest. Huss, it is Justin Thomas getting into the 20s this week. I almost can't resist. He's played great here in his career. For Justin Thomas, a player like that. So that's a bet I've made. Morikawa, another one who I was able to get in a DraftKings, on the weekend. They had odds up a 25-1 on Colin Morikawa. He's had a really strong start to the season. Strokes gained approach has just, it's such an important stat here over the years. Putting doesn't seem to be as important. Not great putters have found ways to putt very well here. So Morikawa, Thomas, even leaning a bit to Finau would be those players under 30-1 that would have my attention.
I know you're a Tom Kim guy. I am certainly a Tom Kim guy after all he did for us last year and just how fun he is. I think that he is going to love every second of this event. They got a 33 up on the board on Tom Kim. Could he win this event?
Yeah, he absolutely could. He's incredible. A lot of people I really respect are betting him. First-timers hadn't had much luck here ever up until last year where Patrick Cantley lost in a playoff to Schauffele. That's another guy. Of all the bets I made, I do feel like I certainly got no room for any more. But Cantley's a guy I do feel like I may have ignored a little too much this week. But everything sets up perfectly for Tom Kim this week. It wouldn't shock me at all if he was able to pull it off. I pivoted at a couple higher points for me, Huss. I took Sung JM. Just everything around the board, solid, no questions asked. He's really also shown an ability to win and play fantastic in the desert, having won in Vegas. So Sung JM in the 30s would be my bet of choice.
Who is the highest number on your card? Like, I mean, the longest shot of anyone that you've bet, and at what point does the realistic possibilities in your mind end on the odds board?
Yeah, probably 50 realistic, but you'll like this. I've played, well, no, I haven't played it yet, full disclosure, but I don't have the willpower to say what I'm saying, and I've said it elsewhere, to not end up with the bet in my own pocket. I promise. Corey Connors, the Canadian, 80-1. We have seen Corey flash at players, at Masters. That's only to say he's popped up when the fields are the strongest. This is an event that has just been so catered to guys with strokes gain approach. He has been a wizard with that. Tita Green at his last event, Hustler, he gained 10.4 strokes at the Sony. So he has just been on a total tear. Last year here in Phoenix, he gained strokes, 2.7 strokes on the green. Since 2010, players who win the Phoenix Open have gained 65% of their strokes versus the field via ball striking. That's from Justin Ray. That goes to my point that this is just an event that is just catered the elite ball strikers. Corey Connors, one of the most elite, consistent ball strikers on the PGA Tour, given the hard sell to our Canadian friends, but maybe it's a crazy ask, but he's my favorite bet north of 50, in that 50 to 80 sort of range. He's my favorite one.
Well, it's a pretty juicy 80 that's up on the board right now for Corey Connors. Feinberg, great stuff. When are you and the fellas going to be dropping the Super Bowl pod?
So it should be released Tuesday evening.
Awesome, man. Looking forward to it. Say hi to Pat and Tim. Keep up the great work. Enjoy the golf and the game this weekend, and let's do this again soon.
All the best, Haas. Thanks.
Oh, man, lots of love for Feinberg in the chat. Yeah, a good pal of mine and one of my all-time favorites back in the warm-up days, and to chop it up. No better week to do it, too. I mean, we'll be jumping into the lock shop tomorrow, or I will be, with Dustin Nielsen, and we'll be all over the Waste Management Open with some picks, and I know our friends over at Coolbet have some nice exclusives. We'll get to that in just a second. Before we do that, hey, it's ice cream weather outside right now. Maybe a great day to take the family down to one of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQs. Obviously, they've got those great burgers, fries, chicken fingers, and all the staples, and the best selection of ice cream treats around: blizzards, sundaes, cones, and more. And if you've got a party, maybe a birthday in the family coming up, step it up, folks. Get one of those delicious ice cream or DQ Blizzard cakes done up, custom made for you. If you want to get them working on it before you go in, hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. They'll have it ready for a quick and easy pickup at any of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQs, Niverville, Northgate, Polo Park, or DQ St. Anne's. And a big cheers to our friends at Little Brown Jug. Getting ready for the Super Bowl, folks. You got all your Super Bowl staples ready. Or if you're going to be cracking a few cold ones, make sure it's the best around. Winnipeg's favorite local beer, Little Brown Jug, the 1919 flagship brand, as well as some delicious new ones available in the Good Times Variety Pack. You can pick up Little Brown Jug at Little Brown Jug headquarters, the brewery and tap room on William Avenue, at your local Manitoba liquor marts, or anywhere that sells good beer. They'll also deliver it to you citywide. You can order online at littlebrownjug.ca. All right, let's get to our Coolbet lines for today. And we're back at it. Well, first up, look at the Super Bowl number. It's basically staying put right now. Philly -1.5. And absolutely no change from yesterday. Total of 51. Chiefs money line +104. Eagles -122. To the National Hockey League, we go tonight, though, and pretty nice slate of games. Another half dozen on the slate. The Colorado Avalanche in Pittsburgh to take on the Penguins. That one's a pick'em. Sharks in Tampa to take on the Lightning. Lightning got absolutely pounded last night by the Panthers in South Florida. Could be a rough night for the Sharks as they take on an angry Lightning team. The Oilers resume their schedule as -174 favorites in Motown to take on the Detroit Red Wings. The New York Islanders, a slight favorite coming off that 2-1 win in Bo Horvat's debut last night against the Flyers. They're at home tonight taking on the Seattle Kraken. Kraken -101 and the Islanders -116. Exact same number for the Preds and Golden Knights. Predators a slight favorite, -116. and the Golden Knights without Mark Stone, -101. And the final game is the Anaheim Ducks in Chicago to take on the Blackhawks. The Blackhawks favored in a game, -127. I'm not sure when the last time that happened was, but yes, the Blackhawks a slight favorite. Ducks +108 on the money line. And as we mentioned, Waste Management Phoenix Open is good to go. John Rahm, your favorite at +850. Rory McIlroy 9-1. Scotty Scheffler 14. Xander Schauffele 16. Morikawa 18. And then a group of guys of under 30. Cantlay and Finau, my guy Tony, 22-1. Max Homa and Justin Thomas at 25. And Sung Jae Im at 30-1. And just checking out the exclusives, we do have some pretty cool Phoenix Open exclusives. Coolbet's own Taylor Pendrith over under 54.5 for a finishing position. 5-1 on Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth, both hitting the top 5. And some other great ones you can get into, as well as will there be a hole-in-one on the 16th hole? Yes, is +220. Use the promo code WST if you haven't played at Coolbet before. When you're making your first deposit, hook you up with a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit with promo code WST over at Coolbet. Remo, very fun conversation with Feinberg. And we did mention Aaron Rodgers, but while we've been doing the show, there's been some more interesting info on Aaron Rodgers coming out of his weekly visit with Pat McAfee.
Yeah, this is making the news today. And Aaron Rodgers, he goes on Pat McAfee, says, crazy stuff sometimes, but he said today that he's going on a darkness retreat in a couple weeks, 4 days.
Darkness retreat.
Yeah,
Not familiar with that.
Okay, so 4 days, complete darkness, just himself in a little house. And he says, I've had a number of friends who've done it and they had profound experiences and expect to make a decision. I don't think you couldn't pay me to go on a darkness retreat. It sounds so terrible.
4 days, no stimulants. That sounds like torture. That sounds like what they do to try to crack people. They probably do that like Guantanamo Bay.
You're actually, I don't know if he's also getting waterboarded during the darkness retreat.
Toughen him up for next season, playing for the Raiders.
Yeah, why 4 days? I think 4 hours would be more than enough for me. So I've
quite strange. Rogers says that there are 2 slots where food is dropped in. If someone can handle the 4 days, they're allowed to leave. No music, no one else inside, just you in the darkness and your thoughts. I wonder if he learned about that from his ex-girlfriend, Blue of Earth.
I forgot about her. Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. And the tweets are flying, saying that he's going to contemplate his future during the darkness. I don't know why you need to be in the dark to do. You couldn't go if I want to go on a retreat, I think I'd go maybe to the woods, throw away your phone. At least you got some light. You're alone, but seems excessive going in the dark. Hey, he's going to do what he wants to do. Maybe he's totally trolling us.
This is true, or whether he's just saying this to get people talking about him because he loves the attention. All I know is I think Packer fans are getting a little sick of this. And if he is going to leave, I think they'd love to get a nice haul for him. So whether he goes, and Feinberg mentioned that, it sounds like the Raiders are now the big favorite for him to reunite with Devontae Adams. Last week it was the Jets. If you're a Packer fan, I'm interested in how you're handling all of this. Hit us up in the chat. Hey, before we go, there was a little bit of CFL news today. First off, a report at 3 Down Nation from Justin Dunk that the Bombers are working to bring star receiver Kenny Lawler back to Winnipeg when free agency opens. I know Jeff Hamilton has said that they've been working on this and would have loved this to happen really since last season, but it's been very difficult to make all of the money work. And Dunk reporting that he wants a 3-year contract at around $1 million would be a slight raise from the $300,000 he made as the highest paid receiver in the league last year.
Yeah, and we'll have to wait and see what happens there with the Bombers. We do know Edmonton, I just saw a report they will be signing, because this is just the negotiation period. Steven Dunbar, who was a receiver for Hamilton last year, he's going to Edmonton. So I wonder where Kenny Lawler lands. And yes, Justin Dunk reporting that 31 minutes ago. And there were other reports. Jake Weineke from the Alouettes going to Saskatchewan, where he'll reunite Trevor Harris, quarterback, expected to sign with Saskatchewan. And the jokes about the Saskatchewan Alouettes are now flying past that they got. But the one receiver that I'm curious, like, where's Geno Lewis going to end up? Does he go to Hamilton? I have no idea. I thought Saskatchewan was one.
Montreal, I'm sure, would be doing everything they can to keep him, but I'm not sure what's really happening with the Alouettes right now. It seems like there's some issues within their ownership management group. They're trying to find a new owner after the passing of the guy that had the 75% stake in the team. So that'll be something we'll follow, but we'll basically find out very quickly as to where that franchise is at once things get going. Coming up, Valentine's Day for CFL Free Agency. Of course, we'll be all over it here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. That'll be a Jets game day. So that will be a big show coming up. All right, folks, we got to get the... Oh, and by the way, speaking of Lawler, sad news about the King, Jerry Lawler, who apparently had a stroke yesterday, Remo, but I'm looking around and there have been some reports that he's doing better, should be okay. A lot of laughs we've had courtesy of the King over the years, and I think everyone that's a fan just hoping that that'll work out for him.
Oh yeah, big fans of Jerry the King Lawler, and we're getting older, and so are our favorite wrestling heroes. What was it last week? The Genius, Leapin' Lanny Poffo passed away. So hang on to these guys. Jerry Lawler, that would be a big one. So we're hoping that he has a full recovery there.
Yeah, you got T's and P's to the man, the King, Jerry King Lawler.
In my head, I'm just hearing him scream, the puppies. Like, you couldn't do that on TV today.
It was a different time, but what a time it was, the Attitude Era. All right, well, that'll do it for us today, folks. We'll be back tomorrow, another busy show, get a little closer to the Jets getting back on the ice, one more day, although I'd imagine many of the Winnipeg Jets will be back in town tomorrow. We'll hit on that a little bit more as we get ready for Super Bowl. And the latest from around the National Hockey League was 6 games tonight. And, of course, the latest on any trade rumors as we get closer to the deadline. Thanks to our guest today, my pal Geoff Feinberg, Brian Munz, Ice home tomorrow, Thursday, and Saturday. And, of course, Mike McIntyre. Have a great one. Get outside. Enjoy this beautiful weather. And make sure you're back with us live on YouTube tomorrow at 1 p.m. and a little later on in the afternoon on podcast. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow right here on WST.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.